Uh, Good afternoon to one and all. At the outset, from the Indian Psychiatry Society Karnataka chapter, I would like to welcome today's program's chairman, Dr. PSVN Sharma, professor and former head of the department, KMC Manipal. I welcome you, sir. And also, I welcome Dr. Kishor M, who is the associate professor of JSS Medical College, Mysore, and Dr. Bheemsain Tekkalaki, associate professor from KLE's JNMC, Belgaum. And I also welcome all the IPS KC members and all the faculties from different colleges, as well as the postgraduate students for this IPS KC MSE webinar. Actually, in 2018, when Dr. Abhay Matkar was the president of Indian Psychiatry Society Karnataka chapter, we had a thought. There are different colleges and also new colleges used to postgraduate colleges to coming in. At that time, different colleges used to have different MSc pro forma. In this thought, we thought let us have a uniform across Karnataka as well as in the coming days across India, some similar one pro forma. So in this connection, we have made one committee under the chairmanship of Dr. PSVN Sharma, the IPS KC MSE committee, which has along with Dr. M Kishor and Dr. Bheemsain Tekkalaki as its members. The committee went through series of discussions and also received many inputs from different faculties across Karnataka and also from the faculties as well as the postgraduate students. Subsequently, the same format was discussed during the pre-conference activity in Mangalore on 18th September 2021 at Father Muller Medical College. So few consensus has been brought out of that, and the same was put in under the annual general body meeting of the IPS KC. The IPS KC AJB has suggested that the same format can be put into the different stakeholders like postgraduate, junior residents, senior residents, as well as faculties across postgraduate institute as well as undergraduate institute of Karnataka, and get in a consensus, and if any corrections are there, so we can modify it accordingly. Then the same thing can be brought into the across the Karnataka from 2022-23. So in this connection, we had again series of discussions, and we are sorry that this was delayed because of some technical reasons, as well as most of the faculties and members were busy with other activities. So in this aspect, now we have arranged this webinar. So I would like to request you, initially the chairman as well as the members, to brief about this pro forma, and that will be presented. Subsequently, we request all the faculties and postgraduate students to give their valuable inputs regarding either our comments or suggestions for this MSc pro forma. After that, a consensus pro forma will be made, and which will be circulated to across all the colleges of the Karnataka for the use and application. And thereby we would like to get it validated in the program. So with this respect, I welcome once again all the chairperson, members, and all the participants for this program. So over to the president, chairman of this committee, Dr. PSVN Sharma.
So PSVN Sharma, sir, kindly unmute, sir.
I'm trying. Yes. Thank you,
Dr. Kishor.
Thank you, Dr. Bijal. And of course, I would like to thank IPS KC over the years for having tasked Dr. Bheemsain and Kishor and me with this particular job. As Dr. Bijal was saying a little while ago, the whole thing started probably around 4 years ago, and then different teams had looked at it, and finally, before last year's IPS KC conference, Kishor and Bheemsain and I first met several occasions online to look at the methodology to be followed, and then we invited inputs from a variety. In fact, we've probably invited all the postgraduate medical colleges or institutions teaching psychiatry from Karnataka, and many or most of them responded with their way of doing the mental states examination. And then we sort of compiled it. We discussed these things a lot. We tried to develop some sort of a basic format for postgraduates, and we also added a briefer version meant for interns in their rotation through psychiatry, as well as undergraduates in their training in psychiatry in MBBS. Those have been thankfully circulated, I think, through WhatsApp by Dr. Bijal, and by Harish. So probably people would have got a chance to look at them. Now, I would like to at the outset mention that it is the considered view of us, the committee, that is Bheemsain, Kishor and I, that this is the idea behind this is to create some sort of a common denominator, lowest common denominator of what needs to be included in the interview for the mental health examination. By no means is this the limit to which it should go. I mean, that obviously will depend upon the clinical situation, the patient, the interviewer, and so on and so forth. We have also been atheoretical in our approach, in the sense that we have not stuck to any particular dogma of psychopathology or any particular form of descriptive psychopathology. So this is and this instrument that we put forward is not a definitive document of descriptive psychopathology. It is just an inventory of likely areas that need to be looked at, minimum likely areas that need to be looked at when one is evaluating a patient in postgraduate teaching. So nobody should go away with the idea that this is what is the limit, not at all. And I'm sure that in the discussion to follow, a lot of interesting suggestions and takes will come up. And obviously we will then try to put it all together and then round it off and then resubmit it to the IPS KC so that they can use it as they deem fit. Once again, I mean, while signing off, I would like to thank the IPS KC for giving us the opportunity to do this. And I will hand you over, I think, to Kishore to take up the lead from here onwards.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm going to briefly outline the proceedings of the IPS KC. I'm going to share my slides. So, as already been conveyed, are my slides changing?
No, sir.
They're not changing, Kishore.
Okay. I'll try again. Is it clear now? Yeah. So, as I already been briefed that the first psychiatry postgraduate teachers meet was held in 2018 at Belgaum, and it was interestingly in the medical education unit at that time MCI nodal center of the thing was in KLE, and it was inaugurated by the vice chancellor of the KLE, and it was the initiative of Dr. N.M. Patil and Dr. Abhay Matkar that there should be discussion on the psychiatry postgraduate education, and most of the institution across Karnataka had represented in that meeting, including NIMHANS At that time, professor and head of the department, Dr. Pratima Murthy, who is the director, she was also there in the meeting. And the whole credit goes to Professor N.M. Patil, the head of the Psychiatry and KLE, and the IPS president at that time, Professor Abhay Matkar, who played a key role. And as it has been told, there were already many questions and concern from psychiatry teachers, examiners, and postgraduates about different interpretations and different opinion, which was impairing for a acceptable format. And at that time, 19 institutions were providing PG training. Now it has grown exponentially in Karnataka. So at the first meeting in the KLE Belgaum, many committees were formed to look at various aspects of psychiatry postgraduate education and training. One of the committee was mental status examination, and the committee was headed by Professor PSN Sharma, myself, and Bheemsain in this. And in this couple of years, only MSc committee stayed alive. And even though we had lot of problem during COVID pandemic, we invited comments and opinion from across the state about the what format they are trying and what kind of opinions they have through all the media. And it was very difficult for us to meet physically, and so our meetings were predominantly on the online mode. We had more than 2 dozen meetings, I think. And the MSc format was collected through emails and WhatsApp. So we decided it should not be restricted only to the postgraduate institution, because in couple of years many institution will turn out to be postgraduate institution, and MSc was also taught to the undergraduates. So we invited every institution in Karnataka to give their format for us to look into, and please provide the opinions and suggestion. And once we had many pro forma, we looked at many variations in the MSc pro forma. Some had explanations, some had only headings and subheadings. Some interestingly also had MSc pro forma for undergraduates by that time. And when we looked at what needs to be done, we thought of making the MSc into three components. The first is the introduction or the preamble. The second is the MSc format, the actual pro forma of the MSc. The third is the appendage, it's a supplement with explanation about why exactly we have considered this, but it is very limited explanation. And interestingly, we added one component of a brief version of mental status examination format for undergraduates and interns. So, how did we come out with this? As Sir has already said, we took many sources: Mayer Gross, Stubb and Black, Fish, WHO, and we thought that the flexibility should be given to the teachers and departments to choose where the information can be placed. Then we looked at clarity. Wherever it is required, we gave clarity on why this has been considered and why this has been looked into this format. We have removed whichever was less useful, which we felt that this may not be giving additional information. And the entire emphasis was on patient-centered socio-cultural aspects that should be deeply reflected in the MSc. And internally also, we involved the interns, colleagues, and postgraduates and undergraduates at different phases for us to give opinion, and after the completion also, so that when we bring this format, there should be some internal quality check or reflecting upon how easy it is for the people to use it and implement. At this point of time, the format is ready, and we believe the influence of good teacher can never be erased, especially when they are using right teaching learning methodology, particularly MSc format in the psychiatry. With this, I now hand over the main part to Bheemsain. Over to you, Dr. Bheemsain.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So I'll share the screen and I'll be proceeding with my presentation. Are my slides visible, sir?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, thank you. Basically, I'm going to talk the outcome, what exactly has come out of all these interactions we had, all these deliberations we had. So basically, as it has already been mentioned, we have a preamble, and then we have one pro forma for UGs and interns, we have one pro forma for PGs, and then an annexure, which gives some limited explanations to the whatever modifications or whatever changes we have brought in to the existing practice. So in introduction, basically we have introduced some basic things like MSc is both art and science, and MSc usually is considered for last 1 week, but in some cases it can be cross-sectional as well, and it's not mandatory that whatever mental status examination the student is doing, that it's not mandatory that he should go in that order only. The order that is mentioned in the pro forma is just for the proper documentation purpose, whereas the student can choose in any order he wants to perform mental status examination. And important thing is that he should document the date and time of carrying mental status examination, because as we all know that the psychopathology keeps on changing as the days progress, as the treatment progresses. And the MSc should be carried out in patient's own language as far as possible, and the verbatim of conversation should be recorded in the same language. When this is not possible, the verbatim should be translated and recorded as the translated version. A tag of translated version should be there, as we all know that we might miss some crucial subtle things while translating it to different language, especially to English. Wherever needed, an audio recording can be used with appropriate consent from the patient, and this verbatim from the audio recording can be transcribed into the case sheet wherever possible. Whenever we are going to describe a particular subheading of MSc, we need to first describe the broad heading. For example, let's say the content of thinking, thought content, and then the student is expected to describe various probes and various questions he put, and the verbatim answers the patient gave in response, and then ultimately the interpretation of the student. For example, while eliciting a delusion or maybe an obsession or maybe an hallucination, what probes were put into, what questions were asked, what verbatim response the student got, and based on that, what is the ultimate interpretation he has made, be a delusion or obsession, whatever he had. So basically, first the broad heading, and then the probes and the interpretation, the ultimate conclusion as to what phenomenology or what psychopathology was elicited in that subheading. So coming to the pro forma for undergraduates, it's a very short pro forma, keeping in mind that it will be too difficult for undergraduates to understand and document the detailed pro forma that is otherwise used for postgraduates. So MSc, as a part of completion of psychiatric evaluation, incorporates information proceeding from preceding 1 week. However, cross-sectional MSc means which incorporates signs elicited during the interview. So date of the interview, language used, and if the student has used any translator, that he should mention that he has used any translator. So it begins with appearance and behavior, where the student is supposed to describe whether the patient was conscious, or he was drowsy, or he was stuporous, and the physical appearance and activities during the interview, maybe fidgeting, maybe being restless, the attitude towards examiner, and any abnormal motor behaviors each student has noticed. And then comprehension by clinical observation, by asking simple questions, the student should be able to find out whether the patient can comprehend the asked questions. And then attention concentration by clinical observation, whether the patient is attentive to the questions being answered, or he's very easily distractible, basically by clinical observation, or if needed by weekdays backwards. As far as possible, we have avoided formal testings in UG MSc. We have given more importance to clinical observation. Orientation to time, place, person, of course, by asking these questions and clinical observation. Memory, recent and remote, clinical bedside assessment of past 1 day event, that what has happened in past 1 day, what has he eaten, who came to meet him in hospital, so on and so forth, which is confirmed by the attendant. Speech in terms of any description of what was the tone of the speech, tempo, and volume of speech. Thought, mainly the content of thinking, whether the patient had any delusions or any ideas of persecution or reference, or any preoccupations, worries, obsessions, phobias, etc. We have not stressed much upon the form and stream for undergraduates. Mood and affect, subjective mood and affect how the student felt the patient's mood during interview. Perceptions, specifically hallucinations, if there are any, the student should describe them and document them. Insight, in terms of whether insight is present or partial or absent, which is assessed by analyzing whether the patient has awareness of symptoms, whether what he attributes these symptoms to, whether he accepts them to be abnormal or any need for help. So based on these particular parameters, a student can arrive at a conclusion whether the insight is partial or absent or present. The details of test or examination procedures may be tailor-made to the department concerned. If some department or institute feels something more is needed, they can add, or they feel if something is inappropriate, they can remove. So that is left to the teachers of that institute. Coming to the pro forma for postgraduates, again, date, time, language of mental status examination done, and any translator used to be documented in the beginning. And the actual list goes like this: to start with consciousness or sensorium, and then the general appearance and behavior. In general appearance and behavior, what was the gait of the patient, the posture, how was the dressing and grooming, whether appropriate or inappropriate, eye-to-eye contact, facial expressions, abnormal movements including tics, mannerisms, etc. Attitude towards examiner, whether he was cooperative, hostile, aggressive, or defiant or shy, psychomotor activity of the patient, and whether rapport could be established or not. And then we have cognitive status. So we have assimilated all higher mental status functions under the heading of cognitive status, which includes attention and concentration, orientation, language function, which includes phonation, articulation, fluency, comprehension, naming, repetition, etc. And then memory, which is immediate, recent, and remote. Calculation, both verbal and written calculation, fund of information, and then abstraction, which includes similarities, dissimilarities, and proverbs, and judgment, which again includes personal, social, and test judgment. So we have bunched up these subheadings into cognitive status. Following which, we arrive at speech. In speech quality, the student is supposed to comment on the spontaneity, volume of speech, tone of speech, and then tempo of speech. Prosody, and then we have thought. In thought, again, what was the stream of the thought? What was the form of the thought? What was the any possession abnormalities? Any abnormalities in the content to be documented? And then we have mood. In mood, we what is the quality of mood, the reactivity, the intensity, and then affect. We have separated mood and affect. I'll be going to this. I'll be discussing that later. In affect, there are 7 subheadings like quality of affect again, range of affect, reactivity of affect, intensity of affect, lability and volatility, and communicability of affect, and appropriateness. And then we have perception. In perception, mainly any distortion of perception or deception of perception. And then apart from this, other aspects which are not recorded elsewhere, like motivation. See, motivation is always a debatable issue. Some people think it's part of thinking. Some people think it's part of judgment. So we have given a separate heading where some phenomenologies they have a gray area. They cannot be documented in one particular heading. So as such, all phenomenologies, all findings can be documented in a separate heading, which includes motivation, somatic passivity, made action, made impulses, negative symptoms, derealization, depersonalization, etc. We feel they should be documented in a separate subheading. And then last is insight. So this is the proforma, and then in annexure we have discussed some issues regarding the proforma Like for example, we suggest the students to follow some standard definitions before going into MSc, and they can follow WHO lexicon of psychiatric and mental health terms for various definitions. And they should be keeping in mind that this descriptive psychopathology while doing MSc is for past 1 week. And it's important to normalize the process. Many a times, many patients might take it as an offense when we ask simple questions like calculate, like for the arithmetic ability, we might ask them to add, subtract things, and or maybe some other things which patient might feel, why all these simple silly things he's asking me, or maybe some sensitive things like suicidal ideas and all. So it's important to make the process normalize the process by having a pretext, like we usually ask these questions to everybody we evaluate, and this is the standard process, the standard way of doing examination. In case of non-cooperative patients, proformas like Kirby's can be applied. Digit forward and backward is best done with a pre-arranged set of series of digits rather than creating a digit series at the spur of moment to create confusion. Abstract ability is checked with at least 3 sets of similarities and differences. Test judgment utility is limited. We all know that even the person who has very gross psychopathology, gross disturbed thinking, and not having touched with reality also can have intact test judgment. So it can be used wherever it is appropriate, wherever it is needed. Otherwise, we feel that it has a limited utility. General fund of information is assessed with sufficient number of probes appropriate to the educational status and social context of the patient. To assess the form of thinking, we usually require a sufficiently lengthy sample of speech. The spoken speech sample can be recorded with permission and transcribed in the same language to preserve the fidelity of patient's speech output. The content of thought is not restricted to only delusions or depressive cognition. We usually see that students are only interested, or only they just are thinking about the delusions or very gross psychopathology, whereas we should not restrict ourselves to only these. We should also try to document other things, like what patient is worried of, what he is anxious of, what are his concerns. Various other things also form the thought content. Assessing mood and affect can be challenging because of the subjectivity of observations and possibly low inter-rater reliability. So it's necessary to document both mood and affect separately, whereas mood is over the past 7 days as experienced by the patient, and affect is during the period of interview as observed by the examiner separately. So as I said, it's very subjective. So by dividing them into various subheadings, we can improve the objectivity of assessment of mood and affect. It's necessary to remember that one can have more than one predominant mood. Like for example, a depressed patient can have both sad and anxious mood or affect. So a combination of mood or affect is not unusual or rare. In order to conclude the presence of deceptions such as hallucinations or pseudo hallucinations, etc., the phenomenological characteristics of these experiences needed to be highlighted clearly and documented. Following this, the content of experience should be documented. For example, if a student is describing hallucinations, first thing, the phenomenological characteristics, whether it is from the subjective internal space or objective external space against the will, or whether it is clear, vivid, and then coming to the content part of it, whether it was what was the content of the hallucination, whether it was second person, third person, derogatory, or commanding, comes later before we need to establish the phenomenological characteristic features. So that's from my side. Thank you very much.